hope you are enjoying the conference. Can I just pass on the committee's thanks to Joe and the local committee at Aston for running such an absolutely brilliant conference. It's going swimmingly well and you should be really proud of everything you've achieved. It's been a brilliant 10th anniversary celebration. And I'm sure we will thank you again at the end of the day. But from me personally, thank you very much for everything you've done. It's been brilliant. So I've got the great pleasure of being able to introduce Farhana Gokhool. Oh, sorry, we were discussing how you pronounce her surname. She says about 4 different ways. I should have asked you, really, shouldn't I? I've known Farhana since she was a PhD student in Coventry, where she's been working around the fields of math anxiety and student support and resilience, and how that math anxiety hinders engagement for students within not only just mathematics, but within all of the STEM subjects. As we all know, mathematics covers every single STEM subject going, and you can't have a student in STEM that won't touch something within mathematics. And often those students that are not mathematicians but are doing other STEM subjects have the biggest anxieties within mathematics. So it's a really important area across all the whole range. Like I said, I've known since she's a PhD student in Coventry, and now she works in maths support in Bedfordshire University. You will hear over the next half an hour how much her knowledge and her enthusiasm and her energy just shines out. I mean, I'm just fanning here. She is just an amazing person, and you won't fail but just start to support her. I've seen her speak a lot of times, and it is just that what she does and how she supports students and that love of her work just absolutely shines through. For the people I was having a conversation with yet, she hasn't won a Nobel Prize yet, but I think it really is just a matter of watching this space. So without further ado, I'll pass over to Farhana.
Thank you.
And thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. I feel like I have so much to live up to now. I also feel really sorry for whoever left yesterday but wasn't involved in the scandal of putting in their name like 50 times, because now we're probably thinking of people that have left since yesterday and thinking, who is the one that did this? Anyways, thank you so much for that. I just wanted to say also a thank you to the organizers, especially Jo, because she's the one that invited me to come speak today. I was very excited. I think I replied to her email in like 5 minutes or something embarrassing like that. And I just want to say thank you to the online delegates and all of you as well. I've had a lot of fun speaking to you guys yesterday and listening to talks. I've got my email address on the board there. I will give you guys an opportunity for questions at the end, as long as I leave enough time for questions at the end. But if you don't feel comfortable asking questions publicly, feel free to just email me. You can chat to me about this forever, and I probably won't get bored. Does that work? There we go. So as Sue was saying, and thank you, Sue. As Sue was saying, I'm a learning development tutor at the moment. And what this means is I'm not a lecturer. I actually go around the university and support any students, any staff with maths and stats queries, which means that in the same day, I could be supporting life science students, engineering and computer science. And it also means I end up seeing a lot of students that, exactly like Sue said, are quite maths anxious. But what exactly is a problem that we want to speak about today? I'm going to structure this presentation a little bit like a past, present, future. So what have I done in the past? What have other people said? What's the current work that I'm doing on maths anxiety? And then finally, what can we all do in the future to support students? What exactly is maths anxiety for anybody that doesn't know, which is completely fine. It's not in everyone's disciplines. So this really long definition on the board has been quite widely cited. And what this actually just means is that students and staff, basically anyone that have maths anxiety, can end up with such a fear that it affects them and they're not able to learn maths effectively. Now, the way that Sue Johnston Wilder, another researcher, describes it is, imagine trying to drive a car with your foot on the brake and the accelerator at the same time. That's what learning maths is like when you've got maths anxiety. And it's something that has been researched for a number of years. You can see the definition there is from 1972. Now, last year, there was a speaker that said something that really resonated with me, and I thought that it was quite fitting for my talk as well. And it was, confusion is a natural state of a mathematician. But how many of us actually feel comfortable making a mistake in maths? I'm a mathematician, and I definitely didn't, okay? And students don't realize this. So when I did interventions with students around maths anxiety, you'd be surprised that they weren't excited about the fact that they've got someone you speaking that's not their lecturer. It's nothing to do with the fact that they finally understand why maths is important. The first one is that they're not alone in this. Other people in their class feel the same way. I can feel the same way. Their lecturers can feel the same way. And it's a common occurrence, unfortunately, as well. That's the first one. Second one is struggle is normal. So I teach adult nursing students a lot. And to anyone that teaches nursing, you know that we'll see the maths is like multiplication, division, that kind of thing. Without fail, every single time I am teaching a drug calculation class, I make a mistake. Okay? My husband sat at the front over there, and he will tell you as well, I have like zero mental math capabilities. People will see that I'm a mathematician and they'll try to quiz me on it. No idea what's going on. And students also find this really surprising. And so when I go in and speak to students, I make a mistake and then I admit that I've made a mistake and that's normal. They're like, whoa, this is revolutionary. So what other challenges exactly are we facing? We already know that there's inequalities in STEM. Some students, unfortunately, do not perform as well as others, even if they come in with similar grades. And there's also little support for transition into HE. A lot of us are doing really, really good work on transition into HE, but unfortunately, there's a lot of focus right now on increasing student registrations, and we all know this. And lecturers have been saying it, students have been saying it as well. And what we're finding is students are coming into HE, they think that they are ready for higher education, and they're just not given any of those transitional skills that they need to have. Now, this is even worse because there's a lot of hidden maths in our curriculum now. Life scientists, please correct me if I'm wrong, but someone told me if you studied a life science degree 20 years ago, I'm sure no one is old enough to tell me this, but if you studied life sciences about 20 years ago, you probably had to do very little maths or stats. Whereas if you study it now, it's kind of, you're told that you have to have some knowledge of statistics. They're trying to embed programming and things like that at Bedfordshire for life science students as well. And you can understand and imagine how that goes down with students. So whenever I'm walking in and trying to teach these students statistics, it's immediate panic. Okay, there might be one student that will put their hand up and say to me, oh yes, I really enjoy maths. And I'm like, yeah, one person. I actually know multiple students that have chosen to drop out of their courses, drop out of university, or switch to another course because they found out there was maths on their course. Computer science notoriously has a high dropout rate. And a lot of these students say that first, it's because they didn't expect there to be maths. And secondly, they didn't expect the maths to be so complex. Okay. This was quite a sad one because I got invited in to speak to a lecture and I basically just got told, students really panic. Can you just come in, speak to the students and say you're offering math support in case they need it? This was within the first 3 weeks of university. I hear a student just say, does this mean there's maths in the course? And I just stand there like, oh no, it started. Because you can't do anything at that point. You can't backtrack and say, no, don't worry, there's no maths, because you can't lie to them. And I contacted the student about 2 days later just to check in, see how they're doing, that sort of thing. And they said to me they've switched courses. And this isn't just one student. This happens to many students and they fall through the cracks. We don't realize it's happening. So maths anxiety, as well as the other things that we've mentioned, are also invisible barriers because we are getting students in STEM that are trying to avoid maths and have been trying to avoid maths for their entire lives. Okay. I have a twin sister, really good at maths. Okay. Did a biomedical science course, found out there was stats on it, completely panicked, was not happy. It got to the point where she was wondering, like, how am I going to be able to do this and actually succeed on the course? Thankfully, now she's managed it. But this is my sister who's had a similar upbringing to me. We've always been told like maths is important, been told that it's normal struggle, all of the rest of it. Even then, she had this concern. And I know that we have delegates obviously from abroad. I know that there's some people from Australia here, New Zealand. But in a survey across 20 countries, it was found that the UK had the highest prevalence of maths anxiety. And that's terrifying. It's been the way that we teach maths in this country has been named cognitive abuse because we just expect students to rote memorize, we embarrass them, we pull them up to the board. We expect them to be able to answer on the spot. I can't answer on the spot if you ask me something. Funny anecdote, actually, I was teaching nursing students, adult nursing students again, and someone taught me, if you want them to get comfortable with maths, what you should do is give them a really easy maths problem. I've never done this again, by the way. And I basically said, what's 1 + 1? And the way it goes is they say 2, I say, look, you know how to do maths. Someone answered 3, fully seriously. And it just shows that when you're under pressure, even something that seems basic to you, that seems simple, you can still make an issue with it and you can still make a problem with it. Yeah, but I've never done that again, basically. So maths resilience is something that we can build on, even us in this classroom. We can build it in ourselves, we can build in our students, but what exactly is it? It's defined as being able to overcome adversity when learning mathematics. Now, you guys will know better than anyone, when we're speaking to students, a lot of what they say is, I don't understand the point of learning mathematics. I've seen engineering students that don't understand the point of learning maths. They don't understand why we have an engineering maths module, okay? And that's because they have low levels of maths resilience. So now when you hear students say this kind of thing, or say, oh, I've done really badly on this exam, I don't know if I'm going to be able to succeed the next time, what we realize is we need to build their maths resilience, okay? How do we do that? I'll talk about it as we go along. So what exactly can impact maths anxiety score? The first thing we need to know is that it can impact anybody. I think there's an assumption that if you're studying a STEM degree, especially if you're studying something like maths or engineering, that means you can't be anxious about maths. That's not the case. I'm sure there's people in here that have been anxious about maths. I was anxious when I was an undergraduate. I would never put up my hand and ask questions because I didn't want anyone in the class to think I didn't belong there. And this was something that I carried on when I did my PhD as well. I don't know if they're going to end up listening to this, but I remember starting my PhD and they're telling me, oh, we do math and stats support. How comfortable are you providing stats support? And I had like this internal panic in my head. And I just went, oh, you know what? I probably benefit from a bit more practice. So let's not put me on stats support right now, but I can build up to it later. And in my head, I'm just thinking, please don't ask me anything to do with stats. It took me a whole year to get started on SPSS because I just made it into this huge thing in my head. And that's me after studying my degree. And that's me after being seen as a mathematician. So it can occur to everyone. And I'm glad to say that I really enjoy stats now. So course type is the first thing. I put this all into an ANCOVA model, by the way, for anyone that's interested. So what can impact maths anxiety score? The covariate was maths resilience because I found out that there was a relationship between the two. So course type. So students on a course with no A-level maths requirement, something like biosciences at some universities, or those that are more, they score significantly higher on this maths anxiety score that I checked, okay? But that doesn't mean students that I tested from courses with an A-level maths requirement scored 0 for maths anxiety. I think it was something like 2.73 average. When you break down the scores, you've got students that have like 4 out of 5 on the maths anxiety scale, with 5 being the maximum. And so this just highlights we can't make these assumptions about the students. The second one is disability status. I found that disabled students are significantly more likely to be maths anxious than non-disabled students. And so again, it highlights the importance that we need to put on addressing something. And I know that a lot of people work on maths anxiety, but we don't realize what a barrier it is and what a hindrance it is to students studying. And then nationality, I think the people that are not from the UK will be happy to know, for themselves at least. Home students tend to be more maths anxious, or significantly more maths anxious than international students. So that really mirrors what's said in the QMath reference. And what's interesting about this is, I think a lot of people will agree here, when you tell someone that you do a maths-based degree or job, or a stats-based degree or job, the first response typically is, you must be really smart, right? It's not true, at least for me, but because I have like 0 common sense, I'm not even lying. But they say that, and this is something that they pass on to students. This is something that they pass on to peers. And again, I'll speak about this later. But this culture of it being okay to be bad at maths really needs to change. And this is having a really strong impact on our students as well. The next thing is, it wouldn't be a conference talk if it didn't mention AI at some point. I didn't want to be judged if I didn't mention AI. That's why, because it's not relevant at the moment. No. So there's an over-reliance on AI tools, especially by these maths anxious students. And what I mean by this is, if students have to do statistics for their dissertation, they've managed to go 3 years without really paying much attention to it. What they're now doing is either getting someone else to do the statistics for them, not everyone, of course. They're either getting someone else to do the statistics for them, or they're using AI to do statistics. And I know, and probably a lot of you know, that it's not really accurate if you don't know what you're doing with AI, it's difficult to then understand where it's going wrong or what mistakes it's making. I was trying to get it to do some analysis for a conference I'm doing next week. Never again. It like worked out means and medians incorrectly as well. So I was just like, okay, this has just it's just taken me even longer to actually use it. Their confidence drops when unsupported, because obviously AI can only do so much. But the worst thing is when AI fails them, either because they get caught or because they don't get the grades they want because AI wasn't accurate enough, their anxiety peaks. They only have a certain number of weeks to do their resit, and it's instant panic, because aside from AI, their first tool to basically succeed in maths and stats, they don't know where to get help. And that's a really big problem. And the problem is that they've built dependence on AI rather than building confidence in learning statistics. So what exactly have I been doing since I've been at Bedfordshire? The first one, I kind of piggybacked a lecturer's work. I just want to mention him, John Hitchcock, really great engineer. So he's actually been doing some work with engineering first years. He realized that there was some students that were doing really well. There were some students that were doing really poorly. And we know that it's really difficult to teach when we've got some students on vastly different levels. You're either boring the ones that are doing well, or you're completely going too rapidly for the people that aren't doing so well. So what we did was, he already had a diagnostic test that he was giving students. We worked together to amend the diagnostic test to make it more relevant for what students needed. Can you guys see this at the back, by the way? Okay, cool. I just wanted to make sure it was large enough. So this is the diagnostic test on the right. And so it's got things like algebra, trigonometry, things like that. I'll go over the results in the next slide. We adjusted this, gave this to the students within the first few weeks, told them, this is a low stakes environment. They're not going to get in trouble for not knowing this. We're not going to tell anybody else what score they got. It was literally just for me and John to get an understanding of what they needed to know. I then offered class sessions, extracurricular support sessions as a learning developer to support the students further. I didn't separate them into students that were doing well and students that were not doing so well. Because if anyone knows, whenever you're doing extracurricular support, you cannot bank on engagement. You cannot think to yourself, yes, I will make it only for the students that are doing poorly, because you might just end up with 0 students turning up. I also offered one-to-one support as well if anyone didn't want to ask questions in this group session. This is, again, something that you can do to support students with maths anxiety, offer alternatives, which I will speak about later. And the great thing was that students using the support regularly actually performed quite well. I want to speak super quickly about a student that was doing the foundation engineering degree, got onto the first year, did the diagnostic test, scored 0 out of 13, okay? This is concerning because the first question was multiplying positive numbers by negative numbers. And so, of course, if you see a score like 0, you're thinking, is the student going to be able to do well? They ended up getting 55% on their exam, and they've passed their second year, okay? And this is a student who in feedback, interview feedback, basically said they were considering dropping out of the university because they got to first year and didn't think they could succeed because of the maths. And they ended up staying because of support offered, not obviously just by me, but by other staff as well. And then finally, some challenges led to inconsistency. I struggled with gathering all the attendance data that I needed. And some students didn't sit the exam. There was one student that didn't sit the exam this year because it was in person and he thought it was online. So small things like this that come up, they just mess with our results a little bit. I just wanted to super quickly highlight something. If you go down to quadratic equations, you can see around 50% of students did not answer questions from quadratic equations onwards correctly. After quadratic equations, you basically don't get any percentages that are higher than 50%. And this is a first year engineering course. We never would assume these results if we hadn't done the diagnostic test, okay? It didn't take long to create. It took about 5 minutes. You can use AI to help just double check what it's saying and things like that. And again, super quick to mark as well. The slides will be sent out, right? The slides will be sent out. And you can always ask me questions as well later. Sorry, I don't know how long I've got, and I just want to make sure I've got time for questions at the end because I'm notorious for running over time. And then the second thing that I did, and I didn't just do this by myself, I have a colleague, Anthea Cowan. I'm hoping I pronounced her surname right, after you were struggling with mine. Short resilience starters. And what I mean by this is every single session that we go into, every single one-to-one that we have with a student, we mention maths anxiety and resilience. This can be for 1 minute, this can be for 3 minutes, this can be for 10 minutes if it's needed, okay? And this is something all of us here can actually do. And I can, again, this is work that's adapted from some other researchers. I can send you the slides that I use to make it easier for all of you. Every single slide that I create, I just add that slide at the start and we just talk about it very briefly, okay? And then students are more than welcome to speak to me about it later on if they would like. It was focused on defining maths anxiety, because how can we deal with a problem if we don't know it exists? I had a student yesterday from Aston University, actually, and we were just having a conversation about my research and what exactly it entails and all of this. And she turned around and said to me, "Oh, I think I have maths anxiety." And I asked her if she used maths support at the university. And she said no. And you know why? Because she was embarrassed to use it. She didn't want to walk in and other people see her as someone that needs help. And this is very common for students. Again, this is something that I will mention. And when she was in high school, it was the exact same thing. Didn't want anyone else to know when she was asking for help. And so she struggled by herself, and she's passed, she's done really well, but she struggled by herself rather than asking for help. Students have given really positive feedback to that. When we collect feedback from students, and we do this normally after each session, they normally focus on the anxiety, which is really interesting, rather than saying, "Oh, you taught ANOVAs really well," or "I finally understand statistics," which is a nice comment, don't get me wrong. They tell me, I'm so glad I know how to deal with the stress that I was feeling about learning maths now. And then finally, it did increase engagement with math support as well, these resilience starters that I was doing when I was at Coventry and when I'm at Bedfordshire as well. The things that I've been doing don't have to be just for an engineering class. I have used them across STEM subjects, and it has been successful across STEM subjects as well. And the really nice thing is, staff usually are present in my sessions. And it hasn't just been useful for students, it's been useful for staff as well. I've had staff stop me afterwards saying, "I would really panic about maths. I hated teaching my students every time it came up. And I knew that when I was teaching them, I was probably making them anxious as well." And so it's really nice that they've come to me and they've said, this has really supported us. And one of the things that Anthea and I are planning to do is actually to give a maths anxiety session to staff specifically, so that we can start working together on helping them become more comfortable as well. So can you just keep an eye on the time for me, please? Thank you. Let me know when there's 10 minutes left. Thanks. I'm really bad at time management, just saying. So 7. Okay. So exactly like I said before, this is from my research. Students fear appearing stupid. So fear is a really strong motivator for both engagement and non-engagement. So I know engagement is a really hot topic right now. So if we can acknowledge the fact that students feel scared of failing, students feel scared of being embarrassed or feeling stupid, we can start to tackle these things. It drives both engagement and avoidance. In previous studies, they have asked students, why do you not engage with math support, for example? And they'll use kind of reasons like, the timings don't work for me, okay? Or I'm busy when the seconds are on. In my survey, in my interviews, every single reason that students gave was all around affective reasons, so emotional reasons such as fear. Some students I found would rather do absolutely nothing, even if they were at risk of failing, than ask for support. And these students also ranked very highly when I tested their maths anxiety. Anxiety-aware approaches can increase engagement, so things like I just said. And finally, over here, online support may be more accessible to some anxious learners. So I know that at the moment there's a lot of debate and there's a lot of conversation about trying to get students in person as much as possible. But actually, if we move students to in person, we're doing them a disservice. There's a lot of students that benefit from the anonymity of online support as well. And then finally, culture and prior messaging matter. If we're saying to students, ask for help, and we're making it seem like it's a remedial thing, they're not going to ask for help. We need to make sure it's clear, and this is something we say. Even if you're getting like 90, 95%, you want to make sure you get 100, you're still allowed to ask for help. Yeah. Some recommendations, exactly what I've been saying about earlier. And then finally, regularly signposting support. This is something that we do all the time. We introduce our support, we introduce office hours right at the start in our induction week, and then we never mention it again. Students get to exam season and they have no idea what they're doing. They can't remember anything from induction. And this is a student recommendation. They said they would forget that support was even available because they're so panicked about their exams. So I just want to start by talking about the keynote speaker from last year, Julia. She said, I've got it written here, we should be expecting diversity rather than responding to differences. And that really resonated with me because it's so true. Rather than creating slides and then panicking later on and thinking, can people see the slides, or the letters too small? Exactly what I did earlier, by the way, with the diagnostic test. We have to actually just assume that everything that could be different, everything that we should be able to adapt, we should be adapting beforehand. But we don't need to reinvent the wheel. A lot of this we're already doing. We just need to extend it to maths anxiety. We need to make sure we embed our support, not just mention it once at the start of the year and then never mention maths anxiety again. So every time we talk to students, we basically mention maths anxiety. Staff mention it to them as well. Train staff in anxiety aware practices. Like I said, this is something that we're hoping to do a workshop on, maybe with the help of a psychologist, because neither of us are psychologists. Offer alternatives for support. So when you're in a class and you're asking students or cold calling and saying, please respond to me and give me an answer, instead, can you give them sticky notes and tell them, please bring forward sticky notes and give me an answer on a sticky note instead? Tell them it's okay to say, I don't know. Tell them it's okay to ask a question and I can answer it later on. But sometimes people are embarrassed to talk in classrooms, and we need to think about this as well. And then compassionate communication methods and testing. I know the final keynote today is going to be on this, so I'm really excited for that talk. And this is a really strong way to support maths anxious students. And then finally, what we do a lot of in Bedfordshire, which works really well for students, is co-creation. So making sure there's collaboration between faculty, support services like myself, and students too. So since yesterday, there was an issue with internet and I struggled with internet today. If you can't access the form, completely fine. There's 2 questions on the board. If anyone wants to put their hand up and suggest an answer to the first question, that would be fantastic. And you can access the form afterwards as well. So I'm going to keep that open. If you want to talk to me later on about it, email me about these questions, that's completely fine. Can we check online if there's any questions as well? By the way, online people, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat and I'm happy to answer them. So what has helped maths anxious students learn effectively in your teaching experience? Does anyone have any suggestions for me in the classroom? Yes. I can't hear you. Thank you.
It's just me. Using VBox in the classroom.
What's that?
So it's like all these QR codes. The students scan it, and you can put up questions like, okay, so we've just talked about this. This was the p-value. Do you think it's significant or not?
Okay.
And the students would never put up the hand, but they respond to it. So you can see the whole class.
Right.
You can see where there's issues of understanding. So sometimes you think, oh, everyone's got it, and then they all answer, and you're like, okay, half the class haven't got it. So then you can kind of go back, like cover it again, try and work out. You can, gauge them at the beginning of the class. And it's where I would bring in like maths anxiety, but then you can use the VBox and say, how do you feel about stats at the minute? Like, oh, it's great, I love it. Oh, I want someone screaming from the room crying, and the number of people that will click. And then when they see the results, because you can bring up anonymous whole class results, they see that half the class has clicked, I want to run screaming from the room crying. And then by the end, it really breaks it down and they're actually engaged much more. And I found that really useful as an anonymous way that the class see that they're not alone. I think the other platforms as well, but the VBox.
Thank you so much. I think that's a really useful resource, actually. Anybody else? Yes. Oh, no. It's too much talking yesterday. Yeah. Sorry, definitely my phone.
So we have an assignment 1 for my big maths course. So it's a service course. Can you hear me or not? We have an assignment 1 for my big service course. There are about 650 students in it. And that's not asking them to do any new maths. The first question asks them to do a diagnostic quiz, very much like what you had up there. The second thing is to try and overcome the idea of them not knowing where help is available. They have to come and have their photo taken in my office. And it helps them. My attendance at my office hours went up dramatically because they can see it's not a scary place. There's no dragons hiding under my desk, and so I find that really useful. And the third thing to get them to do is just to write a little blurb about what maths means to them, and explaining to them it's okay if it is. It makes me want to run from the room screaming, and so that they can understand, like the gentleman was saying before, that it's okay to
interesting.
to not be okay with maths.
And can you both put that on the QR code, because I really like both ideas. I don't know if everyone heard over here, she has a class of 650 students. And one of the ways that she gets students to feel comfortable asking for help, and she has increased her office hours because of this, she gets them to take their picture in her office. So they've seen the safe space, they know how to get there and everything else, and it's worked. So I really do like that idea, actually. I went to a workshop yesterday and I really liked it. I don't know if she's here today, but she gets students to use the "What do you meme" game and asks them to say, how do you feel about stats? And they have to use like a meme card to explain how they feel about stats. And I think that's a really cool way to introduce statistics as well. Second question, what's one thing you'll take back to your own practice from today's session? Hopefully something. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
As well.
Yeah. So that was naming maths anxiety, so that students can acknowledge what they're feeling about maths, and also staff then understand it a little bit better as well. That's a really powerful one. And you can do this in like 30 seconds a minute. So you don't have to do the whole resilience starter. It's literally just, what is this? That conversation I had with the Aston student yesterday, I just said, I'm talking about maths anxiety, immediate. I have that. That's how I feel about maths. So I really like that. Yes.
Share about the whole resilience part of things, and explaining that it's normal to get stuck and that we still get stuck. But I'm now thinking we ought to be explicitly mentioning maths anxiety as well. And I'm going to pick on Sue to come and talk to them about that.
I think that's a really good idea, getting Sue to speak about that, actually. Does anyone have any general questions for me? Yes.
Yeah, I was wondering, firstly, that survey of 20 countries.
Yeah.
I was really intrigued that why do you have any understanding about why the UK has this higher maths anxiety than other countries?
Honestly, this is just me basing it off my limited research and living in the country, I guess. Is we have such a negative attitude towards mathematics. We have such a divided attitude about mathematics. So it's very much normal to not know maths, but you wouldn't go around saying to someone if they studied English, oh, I don't know English very well. It's just not something that you would go around saying, but you do with maths. So that's one thing. The second thing is that potentially there needs to be differences in the way we teach it. And unfortunately, a lot of our maths teachers end up not being students that have studied maths at college or at university. And so they might not be comfortable teaching maths to an advanced level. Or if a student says, I've worked out this question this way, they might not have that confidence to say, it's fine to work it out this way. I've had students say to me that my maths was correct, and yet I wasn't able to do it this way, and my confidence just plummeted because I didn't understand why it was wrong. So that's another thing. And sometimes teachers in general, and this probably happens abroad as well, can say things without really thinking about the repercussions. We had a PhD student who was told in a year 9 parents evening, so when they were about 14, there was no point them trying hard in maths. They really wanted to do the higher paper. There was no point them trying hard in maths because they were never really going to amount to anything. And this stopped them wanting to do stats in their dissertation, in their PhD, because they just thought that they weren't getting anywhere. But it's not something I've specifically looked into. These are just assumptions I'm making based on experience.
Yeah, so it's interesting you also mentioned, I think there's definitely, when I did my undergrad, more maths in the biosciences than what there is today. But I know that students really struggle because obviously I teach first year biochemistry. There's when we're talking about things like acids and bases, obviously it involves logarithms, and then we're doing enzyme kinetics. One of the students described that to me once as Satan. Yeah, there are, but I don't know of specific in my university or anywhere else where they're actually, or the ones in the people I know about it, but I'm not in maths, that they have much around maths anxiety in those programs to support those students.
That's really interesting. Thank you.
I think I'm going to have to end it now. We could talk all day, but Farhana is going to be here all day, so
Yes.
I'm sure you'll be happy to talk in the break and also like the questions over in. Could I just grab a click so we don't forget? Thank you very much, Farhana. That was brilliant. Thank you. Thank you. So we're going to move now. We've got 5 minutes to get to our chosen stream. If it's printed program around in the MBA lounge, you can scan to get an online program. If you want to be in G11, that's here, so don't move. The other two streams are back in the MBA lounge where you registered. So follow us over there now if you want Susan Cadbury or Adrian Cadbury lecture theatres. Thank you, everyone.
Oh, thank you. Okay, no questions, which is good.